Am I live? I'm not really sure. So, hey, Sandcar Buy Sell Crew, Conrad coming at you with a live video from my workstation. Yes, my social media manager pretty much demanded that I do some live videos, right, for the YouTube channel. Let me get a light set up here. Not exactly behind, but not exactly ahead either, right? Is that light a little bit better? Got a ring light. See it on my glasses there? So otherwise, we're setting up our very first live stream, and I really don't have all that much to discuss or to talk about, and I really even don't know what to do. So as I create these videos that we post up here, what like the classified ad reviews or maybe out in the dunes, which by the way, we're going to be getting some dune specific stuff out in the field this season. Of course, we're not going to do it right now because it's just in Phoenix, at least it's 115, 118, the whole 9 yards. So going out to the dunes is at Glamis and Dumont, at least, is going to be a complete and utter waste of time. You're going to be absolutely miserable. So what I thought I might do is go ahead and do this live stream and just share some information. Maybe see if we get any questions, any feedback, what you guys might want to see on the show, future episodes. If you have any questions for me on sand cars or the industry or Glamis, because I happen to be a Glamis guy. The only other thing I really had to share with you was I started the Facebook group, the Sandcar Buy Sell Crew, in, let's see, it was December of 2020. And as of today, we just hit 25,000 members in the Facebook group, which for me is just absolutely unbelievable because I remember when we were first starting it out, and I was like, oh my gosh, we hit 500 subscribers. We've got 525. Oh my gosh, we got to 600. I never would have thought when I started the group that it would have grown as exponentially as it has. I initially started the Sandcar Buy Sell Crew out of a need for myself, right? Like I don't dislike any of the off-road industries, the off-road racing, the side-by-side racing, quads, three-wheelers, dirt bikes, all of that. That's in my wheelhouse, right? That's my world. But in that, what I found is I was going into those worlds looking for sandcar specific information, and I just wasn't finding it. I was getting so tired of looking for parts, sandcars, anything that applied to the dune buggies, right? And I couldn't find it. And you'd log into these classified groups and you'd have people listing up, typically mostly because it's the hot ticket right now is side-by-sides and side-by-side parts and wheels and tires. The other frustration I had was people are listing barbecues, kids' toys, all sorts of things that just did not belong in a classifieds arena. So I'm like, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'm going to go ahead and create my own group that is sandcar specific, and that's all it's going to be. And lo and behold, look at how it grew. So we were in let's see, about a year ago, I decided to parlay that into the YouTube world and create a YouTube channel. Now, this one for me has been a huge learning curve because the Facebook group is kind of simple, right? You set it up, you maintain it, you make sure that no scammers or spammers are getting in there, and it's pretty straightforward. But when it comes to a YouTube channel, man, this was a whole new world. And I had to run out and buy a new computer, get the Adobe editing software, buy the GoPros, and do all the things. And boy, is this a bigger deal to create episodes than I think most people realize. So I've done all that, learned how to edit, and I'm able to slap some shows together. And I'm curious, who do I have? I got two people on here, and it doesn't tell me who they are. I don't know who you guys are. My inspirations on the YouTube channel would be two. One would be Matt's Off-Road Recovery, which if you're a motorsports guy, you can't miss it, right? It's a great show. The recoveries are a lot of fun. And the other one is the Fab Rats, right? They do a great job of doing the fabrication and also doing the recoveries as well. I really enjoy what they build on that show. So inspired by those guys, we went ahead and started the Sandcar Buy Sell Crew YouTube channel, which in actuality, I don't particularly care for the name of the group for the YouTube channel, but it's something that's wildly popular on Facebook. So I've just translated it over to the YouTube setup, right? So there are big things in store, in the works for the YouTube channel. Some pretty awesome stuff's going to be coming. What I'm posting up right now, as far as the classified reviews and stuff like that, is just to keep the consistency going, the algorithms, and the whole thing. While I'm very educated on sand cars, and being able to do these reviews is a lot of fun. It's pretty time consuming, believe it or not, to set these all up. And I really look forward to getting out in the field. Maybe even, in the short term, with it being so hot right now, is doing some shop tours. I happen to be based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and I would really like to get some shop tours done here and then start making my way out to SoCal, where I'm actually from. I happen to be from Costa Mesa, California myself. I know that Southern California is more of a hub for the off-road industry. There's not really much going on here in Phoenix. Let's see, we've got Tatum Motorsports. We've got Fodrell is around the corner from there. Competition Engineering, Doug's Bugs. And then I'm like, Kevin McMullen Racing. We've got our trans guy is up there. Don's Bus Box. Who else is it? We've also got AZ Transaxle Exchange, Bill Capatch. We got a handful of shops that I'd like to go tour and see what we can put together for those guys and make fun episodes, right? Let's see. I'm looking around. Not having a topic or a content topic is kind of difficult. My social media manager is like, doesn't matter, get on there and go live. And I'm like, okay. So here I am. Does anybody of my 2 watchers have any questions? Because I know that, let's see here, the chat. Nope, don't see anything on there. Can't read it. Nobody's posting up anything. Does anybody have any questions for Conrad? And Dune Buggy related, Sandcar related, Glamis related? I pretty much only go to Glamis, Dumont occasionally. Pismo Beach is way too far to go from Phoenix, but I did go there a handful of times when I was a kid. But okay, so nobody has any questions, and I'm supposed to continue this and go on because she said don't just go on for a couple minutes and then dip. Keep talking. So for the sand car that I'm currently building right now, this is one we picked up out of San Diego. The 2-seat mid-engine, the red car. You might have seen the episode on that. I haven't built it yet, and I'm really behind the curve on that. Dune season's coming quick. I'm really going to have to slap it together last minute to get it out on the sand. But I've been collecting parts, and this car was built initially in 1974, and I want to keep it as close to the appearance as it was when it was built. Of course, I want to upgrade the suspension, put some better shocks on it, some better coilovers. That technology is so much better, especially even on a swing axle car. A Dune car, I don't want to run air shocks of any sort or some old school coilovers. But it is going to get a Mazda 13B rotary with a side draft carburetor. I don't know if we're going to do a 48 or 51. It just depends on what we end up finding or coming along. I don't have the engine yet. But the other day, I did pick up some headlights that I thought were pretty cool. So I got these from a board member. And in that, it has the old school style chrome round housing on it, but it happens to be an Eagle Eye HID, which I thought would look really nice sitting up on the A-pillar. Because, of course, we all want to run our Baja Design XL80s that just blow up the whole Dunescape, right? Or maybe your Rigid Industries lights or your GG lighting. Everybody loves that stuff. And I'm trying to stay more retro with the car. So when I saw these with the HIDs, I thought, hey, this will be plenty of light for what we're doing. Going out at night, I'll probably put a Baja Designs a yellow light around one down in the front to, blow up what's in front of us, just so we have a little bit more light coming out than these. I'm not even sure. I think these are the wide beam, driving beam. I don't think these are spot, just based on the lens. But I'm not exactly sure until I turn it on to see what it is. But these should be plenty of light and look really cool on the car as well. Let's see, what else? What are we looking forward to? September's coming up. We have the Sand Sports Super Show at the end of September. I don't have my calendar in front of me. in that we will not have a booth set up this year. I really want to get a booth set up for 2024 and get some sand cars on display. It's so frustrating for me and many others to go to that show, and a lot of people just don't go anymore because it's turned into the side by side super show. It's no longer really a sand car oriented type environment, and you can pretty much see all that stuff anywhere at any of the off-road shows, right? So it's nice to have it in Costa Mesa at the fairgrounds and be close to the beach, and I get to go home and see family. We will go this year and represent and get some footage. Next year, plan on us having a booth set up and having some cars on display, probably some members' cars as well. I'm going to see if I can't get old Billy Ruff from Sandro Manufacturing to bring out one of his cars to put that on display. And I know in years past when I haven't gone, they've run an old school section where the whole, they take a whole building and they put all the old school cars in there or whatnot. But I want to make our presence felt, right? That the sand car industry is not dead. It's taking a back seat to the side by side industry, of course, because who doesn't want a long travel automatic 300 horsepower four seater that you can finance? It's a really simple way to get into off roading. So, of course, that's going to completely dominate and take over. And I have nothing against them, right? They work fantastically well. I call them the Swiss Army knife of off-road vehicles. They pretty much do everything, especially here in Phoenix where you can put them street legal, go drive through In-N-Out, go to the grocery store. We got Jeep trails. It's a lot of fun to own one here in Phoenix and then throw some sand tires on it and run it out in the sand dunes instead of having a sand car that just sits in the garage and does nothing until you go to the dunes, right? So I do understand the aspect of the side-by-side versus sand car. In my opinion, you need to have one of both. It's like having a dual sport Honda motorcycle, it rides the street and it rides the dirt, but doesn't do it all very well. So you need to have a street bike and a dirt bike, right? CRF 450 and I don't even know what the street bikes are these days for Honda. But, having a multitude of vehicles that's specific for your industry or what you're riding. All right, let's see. So 12 minutes in, Conrad's just sharing what he thinks on the sand car industry. I don't have any notes, folks. I'm literally just winging this one. How about sand cars, long travel cars versus standard travel cars versus hill shooters? So in that, I guess we could go this. Everybody knows, right? Almost everybody. So if you don't know, now you'll know. The dunes, we started out in the 40s, 50s, really rolling into the 60s with early water pumpers, which was basically people took bodies off of big V8 cars and they just to lighten it up, and they'll put a bench seat in it and they'll go run that around the dunes, which turned into VW bugs where they pulled the body off, and you have your pan buggies, which turned into tube chassis, which turned into pretty much, 70s and 80s, pretty much dominated by just standard travel VW cars, whether they were mid-engine or rear engine, if they had a torsion housing or just coilovers on them. But that pretty much ran and dominated the industry in the 70s and 80s, was just these standard travel VW suspension, VW powered cars. And I wish I don't have the episode, the Sand Sports. What was it? The magazine, Sand Sports. It was just Sand Sports. That's right. Doug Dixon used to write for Sand Sports. I'm going to have to talk to him. I remember getting in my subscription in the mail was an issue with Playtech Motorsports. And on the cover, he had built 2 I-beam long travel VW powered sand cars. And the blue one, I think, was a 2-seater, and he had a yellow one that was a 4-seater. And it just absolutely fantastic. Blew me away, right? I'm like, somebody actually put long travel suspension on a sand rail, not the other way around, right? Where you had somebody with an off-road race car that had pretty decent suspension on it, that they slapped sand tires on it and they took it out to the dunes. This was specific for the sand industry. So I would argue that in my world of growing up in this, that Playtech, John over at Playtech, I forget his last name, John invented the legit long travel sand car. I was just absolutely blown away. So those were bus boxes, VW powered, lightweight, long travel I-beams in the front, which was a new thought because that comes out of off-road racing, right? The Ford I-beams. And to be honest, you know what? Those I-beams didn't work really, really well out in the sand dunes. So they didn't turn very well. They didn't articulate very well. But it was the first, in my opinion, attempt at a long travel sand car. And I wish I could get a hold of one. I'd really like to find somebody that has one out in the dunes this season. But he invented that, right? And that just was basically like the cork was popped. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, we need to build long travel sand cars. And that whole industry was started. Well, then what happened from there? We had the bus boxes in the cars, and people were starting to put water-cooled engines in there. And what was the biggest one, the most popular one? The Cadillac North Star. Why were guys running a North Star, you may ask? Because they were cheap. Dime a dozen. You can buy them out of the wrecking yard. You know, our dune buggy guys, typically, you want to make them as cheap and as light as possible, biggest horsepower you can. So you're getting the engines out of wrecking yards, and those North Stars were fairly inexpensive and easy to hop up. Then what happens there, right? You start bolting those North Stars to bus boxes, and now we're grenading the box because we're going over 300 horsepower. Bus boxes pretty much only like up to 300 horsepower. So what was the next part of the evolution in the long travel sand car? Mendiola, right? Mendiola invents his brand new transmission. The first iteration of that transmission was built to handle the abuse of these V8s, right? So it was an aftermarket case with the internals of an 091 VW bus box, some serious modifications, and all of a sudden, hey, now we're able to hold some horsepower to these, so we're going extremely fast over the whoop-de-doos because we have all the suspension travel. We're putting some torque to that transmission, and it's not grenading. Let's put more horsepower to that, right? So then what do we start to see? The Chevy V8 start to come in. You start to see the Corvette engines coming in, some big horsepower engines, which is the whole hot rod muscle car industry all in one. It's already done, right? Those engines are already built, they're already made, and now people are plugging them into sand cars. So the iteration of the Mendiola transmissions started to go up to the 2D, the MD4, the whole thing, into all of the other transmission manufacturers that started building them as well. That turns us into where we're at today with the long travel sand car industry. Now, let's go way back to the beginning of when I was talking about with 70s and 80s VW cars that had just basically standard travel suspension on them. What I see happening in the industry right now, especially with my friend Scott Ailes putting on the Old School Roundup, which you are not going to want to miss. That is in March 2024. The show gets bigger every year. It is a great time, and you're going to see some fantastic machines. In that, what's happening is I see a lot of guys are starting to find these old school mid-engine cars that were built in the 70s and 80s, and even rear engine cars, right? And they're restoring them. So now we've got, like what I'm doing with my two-seat 1974 model A-arm car up against the long travel cars of today. So what I see in that for me is, if you're a boat guy, what do we all have? 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s? Jet boats. Everybody loved their big blown jet boats, right? And then what ended up happening? We wanted to get comfortable, right? So the boats started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now we're running twin 502s and the whole nine in those cars, or in those boats, and they're huge. They're these big boats, and they're absolutely awesome. Well, that kind of translates into the sand car world, if you ask me, because the same type of thing happened. Low slung, not much travel, not much horsepower, fun to screw around in. You have a good time in them, but people wanted the power and the comfort, and the cars got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So now we're at a position of, in the sand car world, where the old school cars are kind of the jet boats of the dune world, and the long travel cars are going to be your big boats, right? I don't even know what they're called because I don't do that. What are they? Cats or deck boats or something? I don't know. I don't go to the river. I do the sand dunes. That's my thing. But that kind of gives you an idea of where the sand car industry has gone and how it's progressed. And then at the end of it all, what ends up happening is Polaris invents their Razor, and it just goes from there, and it pretty much annihilates the sand car industry because of the ease of being able to get into one of these side-by-sides. So let's see. I'm going on 19 minutes, 52, 20 minutes. I'm coming up on 20 minutes. And for my social media manager, we happen to have 3 people watching, which is probably 2 family members and 1 other person who I'm not sure who that is because it doesn't tell me on YouTube. And otherwise, I don't really have much else to share with you guys. This was more just an experiment to see what you think, see if we should continue to do these, if we can get some action or some activity on here, if people have any questions or things that they want to know about sandcars, the industry, the dunes, if they have any recommendations for episodes that they would like to see. That's kind of like what we're going for on this one. Eventually on the lives, we will get into the shop, and as we're building, we'll go ahead and share some stuff with you on that just for fun, doing it live because we'll record those as well. But it looks like nobody has any questions. Nobody's asking anything. So I think that 21 minutes in, the experiment is complete. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining my live stream. Let me know what you guys think, if we should continue to do this or not. I guess that's all I've got. Hit the subscribe button if you would, please. We're at 950 subscribers. We're almost to 1,000. So we're so close. I mean, just hitting 25,000 in Facebook today, I thought would translate into 1,000 subscribers on YouTube within minutes. I was wrong. YouTube and Facebook are completely different audiences. But if you would go ahead and hit that subscribe button, that would be much appreciated to help support our channel, support our program, and bring you more content. Otherwise, that's all I've got. Thank you for watching. See you in the dunes.